Today I want to talk to you about the hook, and a lot of people really struggle with hooks, and they are terrific punches, and they're one of the most natural ways to throw a shot. They carry massive power because they've got linear force, plus they've got torque, that spinning force, but a lot of people get really stuck on how they work. And what they do, they push the hook. So they get this kind of action, which is partially correct, but there's no straightening of the arm on a hook. The arm is always bent. And the clue here, the clue is in the name, hook. It's not a push, it's a hook. What do you do with the hook? You pull. If you're fishing and you've got a hook on your line, which hopefully you will have, if you catch a fish, what do? You pull the fish, you hook the fish. So the hook is a pull. Now, it starts off as a spin, and with the torque of the shoulders, the spin of the shoulders, and you've got to think that if I wasn't stuck to the ground on this hook, I would go all the way around. Same on the other side, I would go all the way around. Now, remember that, because it's important. I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about footwork. But what basically happens, imagine for the hook, your arm is bent, and there are several variations. I work on 5 different variations, from the shovel, the low elbow, the level, the high elbow, and the drop knuckle. They're all good for different distances. My favourite one is the low elbow, palm facing version. And what happens here is, if I break the movement down and imagine that this shoulder is stuck to this hip, and we're going to turn the whole thing this way. So I'm just turning the shoulders, and that's where the leverage is coming from. Added to that, we have the movement, the looseness, the movement of the arm. So if I do the arm movement without the shoulder, okay, so I get a little bit of force with that one, I get more force with the spin. What a lot of beginners do wrong is that they don't engage the shoulders and the hips. They don't get this turn. They don't understand the pull. Now, this brings us to the footwork. With the footwork, I'll move a bit further back so you can see it. I see some horrible demonstrations by instructors, and boxing instructors too, which I really don't know where this came from, but what they do is they lift their heel very high. Certainly when they're demonstrating. I doubt whether they do it in reality, certainly when they're sparring, because they're going to get nailed, because this is just horrible mechanics. They lift here, and they do this, and they also turn the palm down, which most of the time you shouldn't turn your palm down. But anyway, that's a separate issue. But they lift the toes, they put the weight on the toes, and they lift the heel very high. Well, what that does, that transfers too much weight to the back foot. Now, because you're hooking, you are going to transfer weight to the back foot, but it's got to come straight back off that foot again so that you can hit with the other hand. So never, never, never do this, because it breaks your whole leverage. I see sometimes when they go too low as well, it's basically correct. But when you hook with a step or with that foot, it just needs to turn. The knee will turn, the foot doesn't have to turn a lot, but it could. You can step with it as well to add more force, and that's not a bad idea, but the step will be as big as it needs to be, and the lift of the heel will be as much as it needs to be. The bend of the knee will be as much as it needs to be. Not this artificial high heel version. It's horrible. I hate to see that, because it's just so wrong. Anyway, I'll calm down now. Right, so let's have a look at the hook. So I'm just going to hook round about here. To get good feedback on the bag, I recommend generally to keep the hand and the shoulder on an alignment. The elbow can come and go depending where your shot is, a little bit further back for a drop knuckle, closer in for a shovel, and this version is what I call the low elbow, and low elbow, palm forward. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to turn and add this movement to this movement. And this is where the force and the explosive force comes from. So here we go. So, I like hooks. Now, distancing, I'm not really going to cover, but it's about distance 2, distance 3, distance 5 being kick range, distance 4 being a straight punch range, distance 3 being hook range into the hook range, distance 2 being uppercut range, distance 1 being clinch. So let's look at those factors again. We imagine almost that the shoulder and the hip are fixed to get this action, and we must get that spin of the shoulders. The next thing we do is add the hooking arm and add that to the shoulder. So we now this again, shoulder hip ratio. In this variation, shoulder above the hip, can go slightly forwards, not too much because that'll spoil the balance, but keeping it pretty much able to spin from side to side. The arm, now the arm movement, the arm is fairly fixed. It can go further back, it can start the movement, and that's usually a good idea depending what you've set the hook up with. And because of its position, to get the torque on the shoulder, to get the best torque, if you're 12 o'clock, I would be, this shoulder is at around about 10, this shoulder is around about 4 o'clock. If I want to get the best torque advantage on this shoulder, then a good starter for the hook is to throw a cross or another right-handed punch, because that right-handed punch will push this shoulder back to 8 o'clock, possibly 7 o'clock, and then that pull, spin back, gives me the extra force that I need. So remember, the knees and the feet are just to support the movement. They go wherever they need to go. The shoulder and the hip are fairly fixed. Don't get too hung up on this. This is just a rule, it's not a law. They're pretty much fixed, and this arm needs to be pulling so that when it pulls back towards yourself. Beginners do this, they pull and push it away. They pull at this point and then push it away, or they try and hit this way without moving the shoulders. So, as we do it from here, again, I fake a right, and hitting with, on this variation, the last 3 knuckles. Don't try and hit with the first 2, you'll hurt your wrist. And that's a basic idea on how to throw the hook. Remember, shoulder, hip, turn, arm, returns, and remember the clue is in the name, it hooks. It hits the target and hooks back in that circular movement. And remember what it would do if you didn't have anything to stop it, it would keep going all the way around. So, there's the hook.